Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's TI LinkedIn and YouTube live stream. Stop chasing tech, start using it right. We have two wonderful speakers today who will be introducing themselves further shortly. But first off, we have a few housekeeping items. My name is Anthony. I'm the Senior Education Manager here at TIA, as well as the host for today's event. First off, we're going to start out with a word from our sponsor. And then right after that, we will get back into it.
Freight isn't static. It's dynamic. It evolves. Today, freight brokers have more on the line, and they need to act faster than ever before. Rates move, capacity shifts, and customer expectations never slow down. That's why, for decades, brokers have trusted DAT. Now, we're evolving to serve you better. We've brought together innovative companies and brilliant minds obsessed with solving broker problems. And we've accelerated how quickly ideas become products, all to create a one-stop shop for trusted capacity, automation, and real-time insights. That means the largest, most secure carrier network in freight. It means full visibility to give your customers peace of mind. It means simplified execution to keep pace with a fast-moving industry, and real-time market insights to anticipate changes before they happen. DAT Freight and Analytics. We take the uncertainty out of freight.
All right. Thank you to our sponsor, DAT Freight and Analytics. And we will continue on with a few housekeeping items. First off, I'm going to start with the TIA antitrust statement. Discussion, comments, and presentations during TIA functions must not refer to any past, present, or future rates, prices, or anything related thereto, include any reference to marketing strategies, include any discussion of boycotts of any person, product, or firm, or inhibit any members' employees from discussing employment with other member companies. Additionally, things you hear during the meeting that are confidential and private to TIA should not be shared publicly without its prior consent or used against or in competition with TIA. Next up, for questions throughout the session, please submit any questions or comments or feedback you have in the comment section on the LinkedIn or YouTube event where you are viewing this. But if you are more comfortable with emailing your question, you can email it to education@tianet.org with the subject live stream. We will have that on a banner shortly if you want to copy it from there. And then after the discussion from our guests, we will answer the questions from the audience. And again, if you have any questions about TIA or TIA resources, some of which we will be mentioning today throughout the call, please feel free to contact info@tianet.org or put that in the comments where you are viewing this. Additionally, when you want to come back to review this recording, you can come back to where you are viewing it now, LinkedIn or YouTube, or if you're listening to this on Spotify. And then you can also submit questions when you are reviewing that recording, and we will aim to check those comments and get back to you as soon as possible. Additionally, our speakers for today are added to the LinkedIn event formally. So if you are one of the people viewing this on LinkedIn, you can check out our speaker profiles from the event right there. Be sure to follow the TIA LinkedIn and YouTube channel for more upcoming live streams such as this one, and visit tianet.org to check out the member resources that we have for you today. And with that, I'm going to now add our speakers to the stage so you all can enjoy what they have to say and stop listening to me. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Well, Sean, it is good to chat with you again, my friend. I think we should have a good conversation here as a couple of guys who've probably been guilty of both chasing tech and also deploying tech, right? We've been able to experience a little bit. So we'll start off with some introductions. So, Sean, if you would, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll jump in myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm Sean McLeod, president of Axle Logistics. I'm boarded at Axle in 2016, so I've been here just over 10 years, and still looking at technology every day, talking about it every single day, what works, what doesn't work. It's going to be a good conversation. I'm here to learn more as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. Sean, I appreciate you being here, my friend. So myself, I'm Tom Curie. I serve as the president of CUDE. Really looking forward to this conversation. You know, I've spent about 20 years in transportation now, and have been able to break a lot of technology, play with a lot of technology. But I think, you know, we often find ourselves in a bit of a rat race around these things, right? Like constantly trying to work. And the thing I always try to be careful of is that shiny object syndrome, where I find myself chasing something. Maybe my customers don't even care about it, right? Like, or maybe my team doesn't care about it, but I get excited about it because I see it and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. That could be really impactful. But maybe it doesn't always fit, right? And so I think we should have a really good conversation. The fact that you were actually in the promo video beforehand, that is not planned, but man, that was beautiful, wasn't it?
I shook my head. I'm like, man, that was me 120 pounds ago. And I'm like, man, I don't want to.
I love it. I love it. Well, a little inspiration for you, my friend.
I made a note to reach out to my DAT rep and tell him
Here's a new video of me. So.
Yeah, no.
Well, good. Well, let's get into this, man. You know, you guys have had an exciting journey since you stepped in the door there, right? And the growth. And I was fortunate enough to be able to see the new facility there, which is just gorgeous. It's a great spot there. And as you guys continue to scale, you continue to grow, you know, you think about the company that you were and the company that you are today, and maybe the company that you're going to be in the next year, next 2 years, 5 years. You know, what's one of the things that you think is like the difference between maybe companies that successfully use technology versus those companies that just keep adding technology, right? Because I think there's a difference between adding technology and then successfully using technology. I'd love to hear a little bit of your take on that.
Man, it's technology is always like it's a toss up, right? There's so much out there that's available. It's who's telling you the truth, you know, and who's trying to pitch someone else just to help a friend out, what works or what doesn't work. But I think that technology is important. I said from the beginning I would never use AI, but obviously I've painted on those words. AI is very beneficial. We use it a lot in certain areas. I do think that there's a problem where you can have too much technology as well. You know, from when we first started, you know, we've had a great TMS, and you know, it's definitely grown with us over the years, and I think they've grown with us as well. I think one of the important things about tech is you've got to listen to someone like ourselves, or, you know, any customer that you reach out to. You know, you and I have talked about it before. You know, when using Qt, it's like you've got to listen to the customer and find out what's going to be the fit, or how are we going to engage it into their day-to-day operations. And it's, you know, we've come a long ways, and we have a long ways to go, I feel like, still.
Yeah.
We've implemented technology leaps and bounds over the last 2.5 to 3 years, right? Whether it's AI or just some sort of automation, machine learning, that sort of thing. But we've also purchased a lot that hasn't worked, and we've thrown money away, and we've learned a lot of lessons from it. So I feel like, you know, the companies that use it, I think, are going to become more efficient. They're going to have much more success if you use it the right way. Well, I say the right way in my way. You know, it's like you know, it's people do think if you want technology that's going to be customer facing or carrier facing and that works for you, then that's great. That's not what I want. I want it to do some of the smaller, you know, remedial tasks over and over again, and not replace someone talking to another customer or vendor. So.
Yeah, and I think there's a layer of building trust there is what matters, right? And I think, you know, especially as someone who's lived on the floor and been on the floor, right? There's an element of trust when you're letting go of something that maybe you've held on to, and I think as like technology providers, you have to be like so sensitive to that. Like I mean, I remember moving my first chicken loads and working with a customer. And if you thought for 1 second I was just going to turn that over to RoboCop to start working, like that ain't the way it would work for me, right? Like there's so much work and effort that goes into it. And I think sometimes on the technology side, people just want people to just flip a switch. Oh, just give it to us. We'll do it all. We'll fix all of that. Like, you shouldn't even be touching that. But you got to understand the layers of trust that were built with that customer to even be able to start moving that freight. And I think a lot of people are quick to say, "Oh yeah, no, you should automate everything." Yeah, we're going to see $100 million brokerage with only one person, and all these different stories that a lot of people want to try to put out there to like get excited and get these buzzwords out. But there is something to the way that our business has worked for decades, and it is that personal element that allows people to build trust. Kind of even what you were saying, Sean, like, you don't know whether someone is having a conversation because they're puffing up a vendor because it's their buddy or whatever, or it's really impactful for them in the way that they work. And so being able to weed through that, it comes down to being able to build trust and to be honest about the product, right?
Correct.
I think we see a lot of those challenges. So like when you're looking at technology or your team's looking at technology, like, how do you help determine that it's like really solving a real problem and not just like creating more complexity, right? Like, there's sometimes that you get into it and you're like, oh, this sounds really good. And then you find out there's so much complexity involved that it can't be leveraged in the way maybe your business works, right? Your business can be a little different than someone else's. So how do you and your team like kind of vet that out a little bit?
Well, I think a lot of people that have solicited tech to us, or any other business for that matter, the one complaint they probably have about myself or Axle is we move slow, almost too slow sometimes. But we've become very cautious about making sure that, you and I we have an acquaintance that, at one point he said, when you look at technology, you look at areas, first of all, that you touch every day. What are things that your employees do every single day over and over again that's a repetitive task that you could potentially automate, right? And that helped me look at things differently, because I used to look at, hey, this is a cool shiny box and this is potentially what it could do, but was it something we really needed that technology for? And I wasn't sure right away. But another thing that we do here internally at Axle, and I've required of my team and myself and everyone else throughout the organization, is I won't make the decision myself. My executive team can't make that decision. We have to sit down as a group. So if we're looking at a piece of tech, the first thing we do is send out, a small survey to the company. Hey, this is what we're looking at. This is what it could potentially do for you. Do you feel there's a need? And if so, how is it going to help you fill certain gaps on your day-to-day or your process? So we find out on the floor first, this is something that we've heard or we've seen or we think could provide value, but at the same time, are you going to use it?
Yeah.
And so how are you going to use it? So we get a lot of feedback on the floor first, and then we sit down as a team and talk about it internally. And, then we'll ask for, referrals, who else have you sold to, and let's sit down and talk to them, because, we run both 86% of the company is cradle to grave at Axle. That other 14% is the enterprise sales and account development ops side. So, if we're cradle to grave, most of the things are going to be a lot different. You and I have had that fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to like Qt, it's like on the split model, it's great. On cradle to grave, we've had to slowly roll it out over time and just be dump it. So you've got to have a lot of conversation internally. I think it's all about, what are the things that you're touching repetitively? Can you see that? We have someone in my analytics team that they look at repetitive touches in our TMS every day. And then we sit down and say, okay, if we're doing this much, how are we going to be able to automate it to get that task, away so they can do more? So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. That's just the way we do it here.
Yeah. And I think to your point, right? Like there's got to be an education process that comes along once you've made that decision, right? Like and I think you had kind of mentioned this earlier. It goes both ways. As the buyer of technology, right? You have to be willing to learn best practices from other people that have used it. But then as the provider of the technology, we have to be able to learn and grow from the way that you do business, right? And so, taking early conversations saying, okay, this is a little bit more unique, the way that they like to structure their teams or work as a team, or how you get buy-in as a team. And so how do we create introductory paths that team members become comfortable with, that you can, again, get back to that building trust, right? So that you can really not just have it. I've been in situations where, I've showed up to companies and they've got, I call it a shelf, but they have this shelf of library of all the technology they bought that they signed up for, that's super dusty. And you're like, well, hold on, let's dust some of this stuff off and say, what's changed, right? Like, and I think it's challenging. Like, I think one of the things that I think could be really beneficial for companies is when you're looking at a new piece of technology, it seems like the last person in the world that we talk to about that investment is actually, like, when I was on the brokerage side, it would be my shipper customers. I would get feedback internally. I would talk to reps. I would shadow. I would talk to references. I would do all that. But it was almost like the last person who found out about the initiative would actually be the person who pays all my bills, right? And I think there's a ton of value to when you're at a QBR, or when you're talking with customers, or when you're looking at a new piece of technology, call your customers sometimes and say, hey, we're thinking about starting to work with a player that does X, Y, Z, right? What do you guys think about it? Do you guys have any feedback on that? Have you guys had any experience with that? In my world, the way that I've always viewed it is, man, first off, I'm going to show my shipper customers that I'm constantly evolving, right? I'm constantly looking to get better. But at the same time, I'm going to get feedback from them. And if they said, hey, if I was interested in anything, it would be this one that you're looking at. Well, that's great, because then when you can come back to them in that next meeting and be like, hey, I just want to show you, I really appreciate your feedback on that. This is what we've done so far. Right. It brings them along in that process. And I think, again, when you're trying, right, everyone's competing in this market around these different customers. And so if you show up very consultative, very collaborative in the approach that you're taking around, even in your own business and the technology you're looking at, you're building trust with them, just like we're trying to build trust with users along the way, right? Correct.
Yeah. Well, and they also will give you feedback on things they've heard from other providers as well, which I think is important from the customer shipper side of things. So, it's threefold, right? You have the carrier side, which when we were talking about using AI and answering phone calls and trying to automate the load booking process, the first companies we reached out to are our large carrier partners. What do you think about this? Can we test it? Are you willing to test it with us? On the shipper side, it's kind of the same thing. It's, everyone wants automated pricing, or they want automated appointment scheduling, or they may have some sort of situation that they're going to face on their end as well. And so when we do that, we have a handful of our top 10 that we can reach out to and say, hey, listen, we're thinking about this for ourselves internally, but there could be some overlap, on the shipper side, and how this could potentially help you. And we'll bring that up during QBRs all the time. It's part of, what are we doing well? What can we do better? It's always the questions I want to ask. But on the shipper side, it's always important because they're always looking for tech. They're always looking for ways to become more efficient, communicate quicker with less. I try to say communicate quicker with more. I don't want to replace people or reduce headcount. I need more people to be able to handle more business or more tasks during the day that are more, customer centric or carrier centric without automating that piece of it. So I think it's always important to reach outside, but on the same side from a tech provider as well. I think what's really helped us, and I'm not saying that I want people to reach out to me and come visit me all the time because we're busy, but the people that we've partnered with have come here and sat at the desk and seen our process and how we operate internally first. And they've been able to say, hey, you know what, our tool is either going to do this, or maybe they have ideas on how they can maybe restructure something internally in their system to help us. So I think it's more important that you need to spend the time and probably spend some money and go see someone and sit down on the floor if they allow it and figure out how you're going to operate. Because again, we can say all day long that we're just a cradle to grave like everyone else, but I swear we operate differently here internally. And if you look at our revenue per head or load count per head, we do a lot. differently.
Absolutely.
I think it's a matter of sitting down and having those conversations is always a plus. And if you're not willing to do it, then it's probably not going to move forward.
I agree, man. I think the best thing for most people to do is to shadow someone who's really living in that work, and to do it frequently, right? I mean, yeah, I was brokering freight, 20 years ago. Well, that's not the same as brokering freight today, and so I'm one of those that I'm still eager to be on the floor. I'm still eager to sit on a dock. I mean, I was on a dock not too long ago, right? Like any exposure you can get like that is huge for really understanding the business and where the business is today, and how do you fit in that? How do you help with that? How do you engage with that? Right? Because you can't say, well, yeah, I brokered, I was on the floor for about a year, about 8 years ago, and still think that you understand it evolves, it changes.
I would love to say that I do, but
yeah, exactly.
I have to rely on the team. I don't cover freight anymore, right? But
yeah,
at the same time, there 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were in Wisconsin and we had to sit down with a customer and their team just to understand their process more internally, because they've grown and they've got a few projects that have taken off, and it's more, hey, how can Axle help us internally so we don't have to continue to add headcount? Well, then we need to understand your process. How are you, receiving rates today and sending tenders today? Even though we see tenders going to other competition, it's
right.
We're there to help them become more efficient internally. And hey, I've seen, we have a piece of tech that we use in the back office, and I've referred that to shippers many a times.
Yeah.
The same with you all. You have a shipper product, but a lot of people don't know that. And then it's just that added value that you're going to give to a shipper or even a carrier, so it's important to have those conversations and bring it up, and they'll value you for it, or they're going to give you feedback. So
they absolutely will. Yeah. And it's just, again, it goes back into that trust building exercise, right? So now you may not have a ton of experience in this, okay, because you're a pro, but let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the mistakes companies make when they're trying to roll out new technology, whether that be internally or whatever it is. Like, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen that fortunately you never do because you're a pro, right? And so I'm not making you air your dirty laundry here, but let's talk about let's talk about some of the challenges, the mistakes, the misses that happen when you're trying to roll something out.
Well, we have more of those than you think, to be honest with you. But it comes down to we argue internally, just like anyone else.
Yeah.
I see a piece of tech that I feel like is going to add value. I don't want to hear no. We're just going to roll it out, and we've done that many a times. And then we find out that we didn't think about it this way, or we didn't look at it this way, or it's not doing exactly the process that we thought it would.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. I've said yes to a piece of tech and I've just said, forget it. I'm going to wear it if it doesn't work, and it hasn't worked before, but that's where the internal communication comes into play. As much as I say that even with that internal communication, we're going to be 100% spot on, we're not, but it's just, I have a hard time sometimes, like you just said, I don't cover freight anymore. I'm not a broker at the desk anymore. The process has changed from the way I used to do it. And I used to think that my way was the right way. And so I don't get as much time to sit out there on the floor and have that conversation. So rolling that out without having those talks internally are going to usually cause problems. But then it creates, you've got to have buy-in if you're going to roll out a piece of tech. And if you have even one person that has like a negative experience on the floor, they're going to still talk about it one night over a happy hour. And then before you know it, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle of who's going to use it and who's not. It's
exactly it.
It's difficult, but we always struggle sometimes when it comes to tech. And I've got, we just hit 770 employees. It's like, that's a lot of people to get bought in. So you've said this on many conversations. I'm going to get the few that are louder than most and figure out what they like and don't like about it. And can we make some adjustments here? And then if they like it, other people are going to use it. It just takes time. It's not going to happen overnight either, though. You've got to be bought into the fact that it's going to take 3-6 months or more. and it's not going to be a smooth, easy transition sometimes.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've said to even our own sales team many times is that you also can't muscle your way into every deal, right? Like there's a lot of companies that will sign up with a piece of technology because they've kind of been pushed through the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll put it this way.
It happens.
That's it. And for me, I couldn't push my wife to marry me, right? She came along on that journey. When someone comes along on the journey, there's so much more collaboration that takes place. And I think a lot of times people are trying to muscle technology where it doesn't necessarily fit. I mean, if I'm ever on a demo and I'm talking to someone at the C-suite, the first thing I say is you need to get me on a call with your operations team who's actually doing this as fast as possible. Yeah. Because when's the last time you scheduled an appointment, right?
Everyone listens to me.
Yeah.
I'm the wrong person to be soliciting to on tech.
Yeah. I'm like, you don't need to do that. And then when you get to those people, I think a lot of people in tech sales, they're maybe afraid of the complexity. And so like, it's a question that I like to ask all the time, especially with operations teams, because sometimes you get operations teams in there and they don't want to shoot holes in anything. They don't want to, they don't want to say anything bad about anything. They might want to talk about it afterwards. And I always end up saying this. I say, okay, you've seen everything. You see what we do. Now, tell me my baby's ugly. Tell me why it won't work for you. Tell me why your business would hate this. Like, tell me that. And it's in those conversations that you really learn about that business. And I think a lot of people want to go through a sales cycle and through a normal conversations and go to the contract and do all. And at the end of the day, you got to be able to know these people so that you can avoid those. Like I think there can be a lot more being done on the tech side, like the tech vendor side, to prevent you from taking a piece of technology that you also shouldn't have.
I can tell you that one thing that we require, and a lot of vendors don't love this, a lot of them don't, but I've got to be able to use the tech. I've got to see that it's going to work. There are too many people that are like, listen, let's push you into this 1-year deal and you're going to spend this lump sum of money. And then it's going to take you 4 to 6 months to get implemented. Then you've got maybe, 5 to 6 months to be able to test just to see if it works. We're not going to work that way. We'll pay you for your time, but we've got to be able to set up the system and we've got to see it in action and we've got to be able to use it, whether it's a sandbox or during live, brokering during the day. But if we can't do that, I'm not going to buy the tech,
Exactly.
And that's hard for someone that's, on the tech sell side, because they're going to go to the company where they want to use this, but they're not sure if it's going to be long-term. And then there's investment on your end as well. But, sometimes it sounds great on paper and it sounds like it's going to work and do the right things. And then you find out that, you get in and your systems can't handle the resource load or, whatever that may be. It's always tough. There's never a good, easy solution, but I do think that a lot of conversations, some testing, if you're able to do so, having the right team from a technology standpoint to implement it's important. You've got to do all of that up front, I feel like.
Well, as you talk about, right, that implementation, right, you're implementing automation, AI, technology of some sort, whatever it is. Like, how important is process improvement ahead of that, right? Like, so you're wanting to put a new piece of technology, but like, can you talk a little bit about the effort around improving the process even ahead of the technology?
Well, it's kind of funny, I caught myself a couple of weeks ago. So we have a process where we can automate the way we communicate with a customer when it comes to like tracking, right? They want an email in this specific format, at this specific time within the shipment, or if it's going to be right up to a certain amount of an ETA of 30 minutes before. At 30 minutes before, if the shipment's not there, we need updates every 5 minutes or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I caught myself, I have a team with a shipper that wanted this sort of updates sent to them, and they send me this half-assed process, right? And I'm like, let's be real. It's like, I call it myself, listen, you've got so much here that it's going to either inundate them, and they're going to get all of these, updates every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes or whatever it may be. And then they're going to get angry at you because you're blowing up their inbox. Or let's sit down and be more efficient and really think about how it's going to work. I think the process, you'll find out how dirty your process is at the desk level and how much of an inefficient team you may have sometimes. And I hate that, but you've got to do it, because otherwise you're fighting just a long, circular, never-ending loop of there's too much noise, and got to get direct to the point. I'm not as much of a tech guy as I used to be. I would love to be more specific about it, but it's hard to explain. It's like the process is already there, but we find out that, hey, you just made 15 different clicks that you didn't need to make to get to this one point. Well, then we can eliminate those and just go right around. And if you don't do that up front, that's going to be important, and it won't work, or it's going to fail.
Yeah, and I think I know I've said this.
You're a tech guy. Better.
Yeah, I mean, look. I'll say this is, for years I've said our industry is scrappy, and what that means for me is that we will find a way to get it done. It doesn't mean it's the most efficient way. It doesn't mean that maybe I could have done it in 2 clicks instead of 5 or 8 or whatever it is. And so, but what happens is when you have high caliber people who want to perform, they will find a way to make it happen. And the way that looks sometimes on the floor is that you have 18 different processes for the same thing, or 18 different ways to do the same thing. And is there one way that's probably more efficient than the rest? Yes, there is. But you still can do it 18 different ways. And it's that nature of our industry that allows us to be scrappy, also allows us to be good at what we do. It allows us to solve really complex problems because we're creative enough to say, oh, that didn't work. I'm going to go around and do it this way to still get things done. And I think if people from a technology perspective don't understand that or appreciate that about users, I talk to engineers all the time, and I'll say, this is the way we want it to work. And they'll build a path, and I'll be like, okay, that path's not going to work because here's what the user is going to do. The user is going to do this. And they'll say, why would the user do that? They should do that. I'm like, because they're a user. They will end up going down that path because they're going to tinker. Right. And so you gotta be able to know what that process is, know the paths that you can take to get there, because if you automate a really bad process, that's not going to be great.
Well, one team that with every piece of tech that we purchase, we bring in my analytics team, which a lot of people don't do. They think about analytics as numbers, right?
Yeah.
But they're also looking at, my team is looking at the tables, and they're looking at where we're hitting tables all day long to pull data and information, and that's showing where people are also entering data all the time, where they're having to make updates to the data. And so they can see this process that can be very monotonous on the back end as well. You can ask the rep up front what you're doing, but when we go and look at the back end and say, okay, well, you just put data here, 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 and here for this one little thing that we could have quickly automated for you, they're always a big part of that conversation for us. It's important.
That's huge. Yeah, that's a huge way to be able to also help quantify the ROI of any of those projects, right? Like you can
do that data too, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I know we're about at time. I want to ask you a couple more questions before we jump here. And I think this is a good one for you because you kind of touched on this a little earlier. Okay. How do you balance automation, AI, whatever it is, with keeping the human element in the operations, right? Because I'm a big believer, similar to you, around that human element in our business is what makes our business, right? And so I would love to hear a little bit, like, how do you balance that, right? You want to be efficient, but you also want to make sure you've got this human connection.
So the one thing that I've said, and again, I could, put my foot in my mouth and probably change in 6 months or a year. But one thing that we decided early on is that we're not going to ever replace the human conversation between a carrier or a customer. So knowing that up front, right, I don't think there's any inefficiency to talking to someone, in my opinion. You may have to talk to a customer 3 or 4 times a day, but whether it's, about a tracking on a shipment or an issue or a claim or just tendering a shipment, talking to that customer is important. And it builds a relationship every single time you have that conversation. So we've decided that we're not going to automate the voice piece of it. I've never seen it work in the past, knock on wood, with anyone. We've seen broker just come and go and try to automate and replace it. And you and I know it doesn't work. But what we do is look at the day-to-day, right? And we try to, again, it's about, what are you touching every single day, all day long? And how can we take it off your plate? Because the more I take off your plate that is a simple, smooth process, the more you're having more conversations with more customers.
That's right.
And I see a lot of people, we've replaced so many people with this piece of technology. Well, why are you replacing headcount? We're using the tech to add more people. The more you can automate, the more business we're going to land. The more business you're going to land, the more people you need talking to those customers and then talking to the carriers and covering your freight. So, it's everyone's going to look at it differently, but we've always been built on, I can't remember who, and when I talked to Andrew Silver one time, I said, we sell service and execution. That's it. You're going to have tech that's going to help back it. And you're going to have tech that's going to help you fill the gaps and make you more efficient. If I can automate, notifications for tracking, so I'm not having to open a shipment and track that shipment 5 times a day. But if something slows down or gets off out of route, then it's going to tell me. That's more time I'm on the phone, either cold calling or landing business or building another relationship. So that's where we look at it. I'm not going to stop having those conversations. We're going to automate the desk level only,
I'm with you there. I think it's funny. We've gone, ever since I've been in this business, I've heard the statement, this is a relationship business. And it's wild to me, as much as we've said that as much conversation has been had about eliminating that part of what we do. And I think there's a lot of risk and danger in going down that path. And look, you and I are in the same boat. I'm sure there's plenty of these webinars and conversations I've had in the past where if I went and replayed it, I'd be like, well, that was a pretty dumb thing because I was way wrong on that. But at the same time, being in the space, knowing the conversations I've had with shippers and customers and carriers, there is so much value and so much that you glean from those conversations that aren't going to show up on some other connectivity, right? You can really build and learn a lot more through just some good old conversations, right?
I mean, in the end, to be honest with you, you want to be efficient, right? But if you know your business and you know your financials and your bottom line, if I did not automate anything, but I still took care of the customer and we just had to add a few more heads, I'm going to do that. Now,
that's it.
One thing I've learned over the years, though, is I do, as much as I don't have a work-life balance, I do appreciate the fact that my employees probably need one. Even though 3 or 4 years ago, if you tell me that, I would have been like, no, they're good. If I didn't have one, they don't need one. But I do the tech and the automation and try to make us more efficient because I do want them to be able to not just get hammered every single day, all day long, right? And I don't want them to have to go home. I've got employees that still go home at night and they're setting their alarm for 3 a.m. to check on shipments. Like, what are you doing that for? Like, set up a notification. And then if you get that email, wake up and handle it. But, we've done it. Yes, it's going to make us more efficient. It should reduce our cost or get more customers in the door. Yes, we want to help our customers as much as possible and try to help make them more efficient. I mean, I've offered my developer to shippers time and time again, and they love the guy, and he's been able to add value there. And yes, we want to communicate quickly with carriers. We aren't great at answering the phones, but you know what? I'd rather have a person on the floor answer the phone than a bot answer the phone that's still not going to give them any help. And give them the runaround for 4 minutes until someone can pick it up, so
Yep.
we're going to have those issues in those Google reviews saying, well, they don't answer the phone. Well, sorry, but I still want a person answering it and talking to you. Drop us an email and we'll reply quickly.
Yep.
But, in the end, it's helping take care of everybody. I want our employees to have some time and I think Axle's probably one of the best ones out there. So I think that if we can touch more customers and shippers, we're gonna do things right and continue to get better ourselves. So it's let's do that.
I love that. Well, let me ask you this last question as we wrap up here. Looking ahead a few years, right? You've seen a lot happen in the space. Kind of as things shift in our market, how technology, the demand on that changes. What do you think is going to really shift the way that transportation teams operate day to day? Like, as you're looking out in your crystal ball here a little bit, what do you think is going to really move the needle in our space?
I wish I had that answer.
Yeah.
I'd probably have another company running Axle if I did. And I do think that there is a need for AI that beyond what we do today. I still think it's early. And I think that the adoption, people have jumped on it quickly just to find out that they're probably not getting the results they wanted. But I do think that it is going to get better over time. And I do think that there is going to be some sort of AI chatbot or some sort of holistic overview that's like, if anything, probably watching my business more than anything to tell us where the gaps are instead of us trying to go and look for them and catch them ourselves. I know that's already out there today, and I don't need a bunch of AI orchestration people reaching out to me, but it's still got a long ways to go. I don't know. There's so many different TMSs out there today. I think that connectivity between shippers and carriers and our platforms have become much easier and quicker. I'd love to know more about, I don't know what else is going to be out there that's truly going to change the way we do things today, because I still feel that we need to be talking and we need to be on the phones, and we need to be getting out and seeing customers. I've got, my balance sheet shows a lot of traveling, and I think that nothing replaces getting in front of our shippers and carriers every single day, and I don't know if AI could help. I don't know if it's going to be the end all be all. I don't know what's going to be next.
Yeah, I think that's
a hard one, man.
It's tough, and I think the reality is what makes it harder is the speed at which it's changing, right? And I think that there's a lot of theories of what the future is going to look like, but I think the problem is we haven't seen a lot of those theories come to pass from our history here, right? I think at the end of the day, every shift in technology, we've heard that the broker's about to be wiped out, and all these different stories that we continue to hear, which isn't going to happen, right? But I think what we see is, I do think we see a more connected supply chain going forward. And it's not always about, is it AI this, AI that? I mean, let's be honest, half the AI stuff that's out there right now, it's just marketing. It wasn't AI 3 years ago. It's the same product. Now it's AI, right? Like in my world, it is around that connectivity, and the closer that you get to your customer, the more impact that it's going to have on supply chain. And as a result of that, those are the companies that are going to grow. They're going to experience growth because of that connectivity.
Yeah, and brokers aren't going to go anywhere. I mean, it's, you've got to have the connection between the small to mid-sized carriers and the large shippers, and you've got to. They don't have that sales force, to get out, and then they want multiple trucks, or they don't have multiple trucks to be able to drop equipment, that sort of thing. I think that the broker is always going to be the glue with some of the small to mid-size, even though they'll sit out there and say that they don't need us. Well, they do.
That's it.
The key is they need the ones that are going to help be a partner and take care of them on both sides, right? The shipper and the carrier. I've said that time and time again. A lot of my employees get ticked off at me because, yes, we can do things to make things easier from an automation standpoint on the carrier side, but still when I'm talking to them,
That's right.
and it's like, we've got to be that partner. And they're like, well, but they need us. Well, no, you need them too.
That's right.
And,
Yeah.
and it's important. I'll be curious to see. I do think that, systems connectivity is the biggest piece of it. Everyone pitched blockchain for the longest time, and then it's like, where did it go? And it disappeared, right?
Right.
But I do think that the connectivity is going to be more important. I do think the data is important. And then, manipulating data with tech is always going to be the key to how you're going to differentiate yourself and your pricing and your service and everything else. But
yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Sean. Thank you so much for the conversation today. It's been super.
Man, I wish I could have more. I love it.
I know. We could keep going for sure. How do people connect with you and the team at Axle?
My email is always out there, and I tell people all the time to reach out, either at sales at Axle or Sean.McLeod@axlelogistics.com. LinkedIn, I get so many reach outs through LinkedIn all the time, and I look at it maybe twice a week. I'm not sitting here at the desk. I'm walking the floor and I'm talking to people and trying to figure out how are we going to continue to make ourselves better internally. But there's always a way to reach out, via sales or just email me directly. I don't mind. So
excellent. Awesome. Sean, again, appreciate you joining us. If you're looking to connect with me, you can feel free to shoot me an email at tom@qd.com, or you can find us at qd.com as well. Thank you to TIA for hosting us here, and DAT for sponsoring the conversation today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. We will see you on the next live stream, and we will look forward to it. We appreciate your time, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.